Everybody, so I wanted to talk to you guys about special right triangles. Now, special right triangles, if I know that if it's a 45, 45, 90, or a 30, 60, 90, then guess what? I can figure out what those side lengths are without having to do the Pythagorean theorem. I can just be like, oh, well, it's going to be this much. All right, so these are kind of shortcuts, and I just want you to remember all the twos on the hypotenuse. It helps you remember the twos, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So, if you've got a 45, 45, 90 triangle, let's go ahead and mark up our triangle. We've got 45 degrees on both sides, and notice that they're just congruent since it's 45. You don't have to write it on both, but if it makes you feel better, you can. And then each of your legs are congruent to each other, and those legs are going to be X. Some teachers like to use S as well, and I don't like using S because it makes me think that it's a 5, just because of my handwriting, right? Then your hypotenuse is always going to be X square roots of 2. By the way, you'll notice that this is similar to one of our last examples in our Pythagorean theorem notes too. So if you're using S, by the way, that would be S square roots of 2. And again, you see how it looks like a 5? That's why I don't like using it. All right, now your thing is you have to remember all the 2's on the hypotenuse. First thing you're going to do whenever you're given any problem like this, label your triangle. Forget the variables they've given you. When you label your triangle with what we have on our 45, 45, 90 theorem, you can solve. So right here, I've got x square root of 2 and 5 square root of 2 with my only given. So I can figure out what my x is. I'm just going to ignore these for now. So I'm going to set it equal to each other. In order for me to solve for x, I have to divide both sides by the square root of 2. This is going to 1 out. This is also going to 1 out. So then x is equal to 5, this right here, because they are both congruent. That means I can say now that x is equal to 5 and y is equal to 5. And in this one, I was a little lazy in that I didn't write x equals again. If you're using s, that was s square root of 2 is equal to 5 square root of 2. And again, you see how similar it looks? So s is equal to 5. And that's why we can say that x and y were equal to 5 in this situation, because that's the variables they gave us. So I come back to those variables after I'm done. I solve what I need to, and then I just go, oh, this is what you wanted from me? Here you go. So let's do example 2 right here. This one's working with the square. We've got 45, 45, 90s. And so I'm going to mark it up, and these are going to get my congruency marks. All right, so the only given that we have is this one right here. And remember, I'm ignoring these two right now. So I've got 9 as x, and I'm going to take that as x squared root of 2 is equal to 9 square root of 2. You just drop it in there. It's just a placeholder. And that means that x that they wanted from us is equal to 9, and y is equal to 9 square roots of 2, because it's the hypotenuse of both of those triangles. Now here's a harder one. All right, we're just leveling up, it's okay. So first things first, label your triangle. You'll want to remember that this number under the radicand, tells you how many angles you're working on, different types. So 45, 45, 90, you've got 2 different angles, a 45 and a 90. So that's that, 2. That's what helps me remember it too. Now I'm going to set this equal with my given. And I'm going to be dividing by radicals. This is the Algebra 1 skill, so if you're struggling with this or you don't remember or you never learned it, then shoot me a message and we'll make sure to give you some instruction over that. So I'm going to divide both sides by the square root of 2. This is going to 1 out. And now for the square root of 6, I want you to think about it as the square root of 3 times the square root of 2. The square roots of 2 will 1 out. And you're going to be left with that square root of 3 still. So you get that 2 square roots of 3. And that bold X right here, that's equal to 2 square roots of 3. Well, if that's 2 square roots of 3, then this is also 2 square roots of 3. Which means X and Y are both 2 square roots of 3 in this instance. All right, so label it out, solve for what we know with our triangle, how we set it up, and then we'll give them their answers that they want. All right, so same thing. We know it's a 45, 45, 90. These two are congruent. That means these two are congruent, and we label it out. X squared root of 2. We know that our x is 7 square roots of 2. So in order to find our hypotenuse, we're going to take the 7 square roots of 2 and multiply it by the square root of 2 here. And here's my work behind it if you want an in-depth thing. I know that it's going to be 14. Because what ends up happening is since both of these radicands are the same, we're multiplying a radical by a radical, our square roots end up canceling out, so it becomes 7 times 2. Here's another way of looking at it. We're doing outside times outside and inside times inside. That's 7 times 1 and 2 times 2, 7 square roots of 4. That means it's 7 times 2, and that gets you that 14 right here. So that means x that they wanted is equal to 7 square roots of 2, and y is equal to 14. So you'll notice that this time they switched where the square root of 2 was. They're going to do that a lot. In fact, it's one of the things that they do heavily on your SAT. This is a very important skill to know. Label your triangles with what we know and solve. Forget about what they're asking you for. You'll come back to that later and you'll deal with their nonsense later. Solve for what you know. Now it's a 45, 45, 90. You've also got a 30, 60, 90. Now, between the two, most students typically get confused. But if you just remember that all the 2's are on the hypotenuse, see how that rhymes? You'll be set. Now, your short leg is going to be across your shortest angle, your smallest angle. Which means if this is my shortest angle, shortest side, then this right here opposite it is my shortest angle. And then your long leg is going to be the longer of the 2. And your hypotenuse, of course, is the longest. All the 2's on the hypotenuse. This radical right here, that radicand, the square root of 3, we're working with 3 different types of angles. 30, 60, 90. 1, 2, 3. On the last one, it was a 45, 45, 90. So you're just working with 2 different angle measures. And that's what helps me remember what's under that radical. So let's do an easy example first. We're going to warm up again. Always, always, always label. And I know this is the case because all the 2's are on the hypotenuse and my shortest side is across from my shortest angle. Technically 2x is my longest side, and that's why it's across my largest angle, 90 degrees. All right, the only given that we have is this. So I'm going to set it equal to each other, and some of you can already tell what it's going to be. There we go. Sorry about that. So I should have said x square root of 3 is equal to 4 square roots of 3. Well, divide both by the square root of 3 so we can one it out, and you get x is equal to 4. Now, you're probably like, Miss Amji, I already could tell it was 4. You're right, but it gets you ready for those harder problems that we're going to do. So I want you to get into the habit of doing that. So if this is 4, then we have to do 2 times that to get my hypotenuse. So I get 2 times 4, which is 8. So now I can actually answer about their variables that they had asked me about at the beginning because I have all of my lengths. So x is equal to 4 and y is equal to 8. I'm lazy and I didn't write it twice, so. Let's do example 6. All right, so you guys already see what y is going to equal, but we'll just walk through it together. There we go. Haha. All right, so first things first, label your triangle. The only thing that we've been given is this. So x is equal to 7 square roots of 3. That means we can easily find out our y and our x. So now I'm going to do my longer one, the one that's 60 degrees right here across from that 60. And we're going to do 7 square roots of 3 times the square roots of 3. Outside times outside, inside times inside. So you get 7 square roots of 9, which means that's really just 7 times 3. So that gets me that x square roots of. So again, that gives me x squared of 3 is equal to 21, which means x is equal to 21 because that's what they were asking us for. And you'll notice that I already have the y set up because Miss Samji apparently can't animate. So we've got 14 square roots of 3 here because it's just outside times outside and inside times inside. There's nothing to multiply on the inside for this one by, so it's just on the outside. All right, so go ahead and label that triangle. Our x, same concept that we just did. All right, so we're going to do the hypotenuse first in this just because it's my x value. And this one, I just don't want to deal with it yet. So I'm going to do 12 square roots of 3, my x, times 2. Well, that's going to be 24 square roots of 3 because you're just doing the outsides, multiplying them together. On this one, it's going to be 12 square roots of 3 times the square root of 3. So that's 12 square roots of 9, which is really just 12 times 3. And if you're seeing that trend, all that's happening is that radical knocks out and it just becomes 12 times 3. If you're not seeing if that messed with you, don't worry about it. Just keep doing what we've been doing. 12 times 3 is 36. So this entire length right here, your long leg, is 36. That means we can say that y is equal to 36 based upon the variables that they've wanted from us. Again, if you're like, Miss Amji, the x's mess with me, I can't shut off the variables like that, then go ahead and use s. Or maybe you want to use k, I like s. I don't want to use l because of leg. But do what works best for your brain. All right, here's our last example. So I'm going to mark up my triangle first. You'll notice that I've got 2 sets of triangles, and I know let's see, that both of them are going to be congruent because of these opposite lines. So this one's is also a right angle. We've got an angle side that's congruent here. So that works for us. And that's why I was able to mark it up. Notice it's just a rectangle cut in half, guys. Okay, so based upon this, the only thing that I'm really missing is my hypotenuse and my long leg. I've been given my short leg. So x is equal to 5. Now I need to find my long leg, which I'm just going to drop it in. And when I'm doing the hypotenuse, it's the same thing. I'm just dropping in right there. And I get 10, which means x is equal to 5, what they're looking for. And the y that they're looking for is 5 square roots of 3. All it is a matter of dropping in. And sometimes you're going to have to multiply. That's it. Want exact answers when you're working with 30, 60, 90s and 45, 45, 90s. So now that you have both triangles, I want you to remember all the 2's on the hypotenuse. So if it's a 45, 45, 90, you've got x square roots of 2, and both of those are congruent. Your angles are congruent. Right here, all the 2's on the hypotenuse. Your shortest side is across your shortest angle, which means the last one remaining is x square roots of 3. That 2 and that 3 tells you how many types of angles you're working with. I had a 45 and a 90 here, so that's 2 types. And I had a 30, 60, and 90 here, so that's 3 types. All right. This is something you need to memorize. They will not give this to you on the SAT. And from this point forward in your math career, you need to know this. So you may or may not have timed quizzes over this chapter. Just remember, all the 2's on the hypotenuse. All right, thanks for watching.